right, so here's the introduction. KHOP88, normally joined by my co-host Marty Glickman. Okay, so I don't know how often you guys watch the show, but we have like one, you know how like bingeable shows have like these plots that go through the whole season. So the plot that's going through our whole season is Marnie is moving from California to Portland.
Yep.
And the news I got today is that they have bought a house in Portland. And so that's why she's not on tonight, because they bought a house and they're like on their way back to California. So
should I feel insulted that the home is taking precedence over this, or is that?
I would.
Should I? Okay.
I think right. You specifically, Bryan less so, me.
Yeah.
So joined by two good friends from Hopkins High School, Jim Keene, Bryan Olson. Jim out there in the mountains in Denver, and Bryan Olson in the western suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Louis Park. Great to see you guys, and welcome to KHOP88.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
So we are doing the football show next week, and I know you guys both played football, so we're going to skip football, but this type of weather has got to remind you both of spring sports season at Hopkins High School. Jim played baseball. Bryan ran track. Let's start with you, Bryan. Tell us what events you ran in high school, and what do you remember about that track experience?
I was a 400 guy. So I did open 4x4, and then senior year, we almost went to state in the 4x1. We just missed going to state in 4x1. So,
oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool. And now my daughter, who's actually a senior at St. Louis Park too, she's been running this year. She's been doing the 4x1 and the 4x2. So it's kind of cool to, reminisce when you go back to some of these, track meets and sit there and go, oh yeah, I know what she's doing. She's about ready to puke.
Yeah. Well, the 400 is brutal, right?
Yeah.
Like, how did you decide? Yeah. Why was that something that you decided?
I wasn't fast enough to run like that. Yeah, exactly. It was kind of, hey, you've never been here before, so why don't you run this? Yeah, no, I wasn't fast enough to do like the 4x1 or the open 100. So they just stuck me in the 400, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that pretty much sucked. But you had a really good time. Why don't you stick with that? Damn it. So,
all right, we're going to get back to track in a second. Jim, you played baseball. So you moved to Hopkins from California.
Correct.
So obviously you're a baseball guy. You played baseball probably all year round in California. You come to Minnesota. Baseball, was that your sport? What was your sport between baseball and football? What was your number?
Well, I wasn't great in either, but I tended to gravitate towards football. And then I had an injury. I tore my knee up after my junior year. So I played baseball both years, and baseball was great, right? Like I ended up playing in college and all that stuff, but when I'll never forget. I'll tell a football story maybe next week or whatever. But when we jumped into baseball season, I didn't realize how damn cold it is in Minnesota in the spring. And I'll never forget this. Like one of the first games, we were playing at home, and Rick Rathier, who I think pitched for Edina at the time, if I'm not mistaken, so this kid ended up pitching it like Arkansas, and he threw like, I don't know, like the low 90s, 92, 93, something like that. And I swung the bat, and I'm not kidding you, like aluminum bat broke. I swung and hit it back to the pitcher. I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. And I think it had to be like 35 degrees outside. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even. So anyway, Bryan always calls me soft. He is actually accurate. So when it comes to weather, it is different,
It is a rite of passage when you grow up playing baseball, like Little League baseball in Minnesota, especially when they wood bats.
Yeah.
You're taking batting practice, and you're right. It's like damp 45 degrees or something like that. And you catch it funny, and that vibration just all the way up your arm.
Absolutely.
You just shiver. I lived in Minnesota, so we moved around a whole bunch growing up. And we lived in Minnesota when I was in second grade for 1 year. And I remember running around playing soccer. And I think it was like a spring soccer league or something like that. And I'm running around in shorts, and it's snowing outside. And I think that's the only time I ever asked my parents if I could quit a sport. And they're like, yep, you can do that. So it was because that weather was so damn cold. I'm like, what are we doing out here running around in shorts? So it was crazy.
Bryan, who was your coach? I mean, I know that track is a weird sport. There's probably a nominal head coach. Who was the coach that you worked with the most in the sprints, and what was that like?
Oh, it was Coach Telshaw for sure. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he kind of ran the weight room too. So Jim, I don't remember. You remember Coach Telshaw when we were in the weight room? Yeah. So kind of junior, senior year, he would be in the weight room, and then so that's where he kind of, Jim and I would pretty much every day after school during the off season, he and I would go and mostly just screw around in the weight room, but we would spend time in the weight room, and Coach Telshaw would just talk our ear off about, hey, here's what you should be doing, here's the squats and all this stuff that we should be working on. And he was a great coach. In fact, I saw him. We went up to the Lindbergh Center. My son wanted to do some stuff. He was doing some training for some things, and he was still up at the Lindbergh Center running the weight room up there. That was like a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this weight room is great because I want to talk a little bit. We haven't talked about the weight room very much. It has come up on a couple of occasions. Most recently, Heidi Zeke, you guys might remember Heidi.
Oh, yeah.
Who was, like a deadly fast pitch pitcher. And she said that somewhere along the line in high school, the softball coach, Bonnie Johnson, said, Heidi, you should start lifting weights. You should, do some off-season conditioning and stuff. And she said she sort of opened the door to the weight room and looked in there and then said, no. And
because we were there? Most likely.
Specifically. What I remember about the Hopkins High School weight room is Metallica, loud Metallica, and it was pretty cool in there, right? It wasn't total meathead stuff. Was that your memory?
No, I Bryan, I've told you this story. So I came from the school I came from in Southern California is a big, it's a big Catholic high school out there. It's called Mater Dei, which is a big, like nationally ranked and everything. And the weight room, I'm not kidding you, is the size. It's probably a couple thousand square feet. Like it's huge. So we went to Hopkins, and Bryan, you remember I'm like, whoa, this is like there's like one set of everything. And so it wasn't a big. I do remember. I will tell you the thing I remember most about the weight room is like watching. If you guys remember Trent Steele and Jesse Couches, I'm like, oh, dude, those guys don't miss arm day or leg day. And I'm like, I'll just be over here in the corner, while you guys do your thing. So that might have been the experience of others too. At least it was for me sometimes.
Well, I think Jim, though, you were kind of the leader with the weight room thing because you came and you were just kind of disappointed with like, look at how skinny most of these guys are. And then you showed me like your yearbook from Mater Dei, and it looked like looking at a D1 offensive line. We're like, we got to get guys in the weight room. So you kind of drugged me to the weight room that first year.
Yeah, and we had some big guys. Like there was some. I remember Mark and some of these other guys who would get in there and hit it a little bit, and Pacheco, and there was even the hockey guys. Like growing up in California, we didn't have hockey teams, but I'll tell you who hit the weight room a ton were the hockey guys. Man, they'd get after it a little bit, and those guys are scrappy too. There's no doubt.
From what you remember, Bryan, was the direction that you guys got in the weight room, was it decent? Was it looking back terrible on it? Okay.
No, it was terrible. We got a sheet. I think that's what Jim complained about the most is like after junior year, we got a sheet and it's like, here's the lifts you should do. And here's some, 1 week do this and then 1 week do that. And Jim guys was like, you're kidding me, right? I'm like, what? I'd never been there a ton. So I'm like, I don't know. Jim was, no, this is ridiculous. There should be a whole program. There should be a training table. There should be, no, it was nothing.
But we got there. Now I think when you look at Hopkins, I think you guys keep me honest here. I think Hopkins is pretty legit, right? Relative to all the kids. I didn't know this, but the player of the year in college basketball, right? Like from UConn, Hopkins.
Yep.
Gosh, who's the other kid? Don't they have another one turned out that is there? I'm trying to remember, but there was a kid recently in basketball, just another stud. I think they're turning them out pretty good, aren't they?
Basketball, especially.
Yeah.
The best women's basketball player in the country, Paige Beckers, is from Hopkins.
Yeah.
Well, and Jason, I don't know if you remember, do you remember Coach Cosgriff?
Oh, yes. He-Man, right? Or yeah, He-Man.
Yeah. So he
looked
was
like He-Man.
he was our 8th grade football coach at North. I think that was like his first year coaching was Coach Cosgriff. I saw him at probably about 10 years ago now. I walked up, I was at a Timberwolves game, and I'm like, hey, that's Coach Cosgriff. And I walked up behind him. I'm like, hey, Coach Cos. And he turns around and he's like, hey, Bryan Olson, what are you doing here? And and he asked me about like 4 or 5 guys that we played. How do what's going on with this guy? What's going on with that guy? And it was just amazing how he knew everybody. It was so cool.
That is cool.
So I was on the cross country skiing team, and we used the weight room a little bit. And it was great because some of our training was like light weights, lots of reps. And that was always fun to walk up to that Nautilus machine and pull the key out and put it up on like the 20 and I'm just going to do a few benches here on 20. Don't mind me.
Meanwhile, Trent Steele comes in and just lifts the whole thing and throws it down when he's done. Yeah, exactly.
Jason, you brought up Coach Johnson, Bonnie Johnson.
Yeah.
So Jim, did you take that strength and conditioning class that she taught?
I did not know. I
think junior year, Sean Doherty and I took that. And that's the only time I've ever been kicked out of a class. Because Sean and I remember they had the bikes in there, and Sean and I would just sit there and we put our feet up on the handlebars. And she came over and she says, hey, what are you guys doing? So riding the bikes. She goes, no, you're not. I said, yeah, I am. She goes, well, no, you're not. I said, well, I'm going downhill. And you're out. You, Doherty, Olson, out. Go to lunch.
And smart ass, get out.
Yeah. Getting kicked. I mean, some kids I think got kicked out of class quite a bit. I got kicked out of class on 1 or 2 occasions, and it stuck with you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It was like, maybe not tomorrow.
Yeah, that was I think the one and only time that really happened. So
yeah. All right, Jim, baseball coach Dwayne Welch.
Yeah.
Tell us about Dwayne. What kind of a coach was he? Was he a loud guy, quiet guy? What?
No, I'll tell you first and foremost, before I get to coaching, God rest his soul, like he passed obviously, and a few years back. Was it a couple years last year? 2 years ago, maybe. He was a hell of a baseball coach. He was a better man, and
okay.
He was just a super nice guy, and he was one of those guys where if you were having a tough day, he'd come in and put his arm around you and just kind of pick you up a little bit and tell you, things are going to be okay. And sometimes when you're playing baseball, hell, if you fail 70% of the time, you're an all-star. Think about that. Like that doesn't happen in a whole lot of sports. And so, to nobody's going to go out and hit 500. It just doesn't happen, right? High school, maybe you get a couple. Todd Steiner, one of the best players I've ever played with, right? And that guy would kill it. But in general, you have ups and downs. And so Coach Welch was always one that, sort of kept things pretty even. And we had a hell of a baseball team. Like it was, we were, we lost our junior year. We lost that the game to Apple Valley in the Metrodome, but we were pretty damn legit for a couple of years there. And it was great. And he was the motion behind that. He was the rudder that kept us going. And he was just even keel. Never got too high, never got too low, but just a hell of a guy.
Now, I mean, back in those days in Hopkins anyway, now sports is the machine, especially in suburban programs, starts in 2nd grade, and high school coaches identify these kids, and it's just spun on up. Back in those days, the Hopkins baseball coach got who he got. There was no magic about it. There was no, feeder system. Couple of different little leagues probably feeding into that high school team. So what was it? What did he do that made Hopkins teams good?
Yeah, I mean, my frame of reference is 2 years, right? But I would just say the one thing that he did really well is just sort of get out of the way.
Okay.
We, especially in our couple years, man, we were pretty talented, and part of that is getting out of the way. And I don't mean that out of disrespect, like, hey, just write the lineup and kick your feet up, because there was a lot of work in that. But sometimes you can overcoach things, and you can get to a point where it's you're trying to push all the right buttons, and sometimes as a result you push all the wrong buttons. And he knew he had a pretty good team, and but he did a great job of like weaving in kids who maybe didn't play all that much, but still gave them a chance and kept them part of the team, and making sure that everybody was cohesive. And the bus rides, going to and from, and I remember some of those were some of the best times ever, right? And just keeping things loose and not taking ourselves too seriously, which I think sometimes you can do, and especially when you have a target on your back, which after a while, towards the end of the season, we started having a target on our back. In our senior year, we did as well, because we came off a great year as well. And not taking yourself too seriously, I think is a trait of a good coach as well. And he did all of that, and it was fun to watch. And sometimes I've been around a ton of other coaches. I've coached here in Colorado and other places as well. And sometimes you get coaches like who try and make sure that they know you're the coach. It's not what you need,
Right.
Especially in a sport like baseball, where it's such a humbling sport. So he was a great coach, great man.
It did, and this is true too of the track team. It did seem like and I watched a lot of baseball games, had good friends on the team, but it seemed like you guys always had a lot of fun, and the same was true for track. I mean, maybe track is. My son ran track once, and I went to a meet, and I was like, this is the closest thing that high school has to a nightclub, and that's like more than like a homecoming dance. Like, these kids are just openly literally playing the field in the infield of a track meet. Is that how it was when you were in high school, Bryan?
It wasn't quite like that, but it was such a nice respite from football, which was so regimented, and track just being something completely different than, I remember just walking by, the baseball team and going, suckers, you guys, we had about a 12-minute workout today, and you guys are still out there. It was such a nice change of pace from some of the other sports. I really enjoyed that piece of it. It was just so much more laid back, and it was just kind of all on you. Either you did it or you didn't. And
yeah.
But even if you didn't, you still got to participate, really, right? So
yeah.
Hey Bryan, on track now. Do you remember? We have a neighbor whose daughter runs track, and now she's phenomenal. She runs at Oregon, like crazy track person. But going to the track meets in high school, did you all have to stay from like the first event to the last event the whole time?
But I always did, because I was always the last event. I was in the 4x4, so I always had to stay for the whole thing. But no, you really don't. Even today, my daughter does some of that stuff, and she gets done with the 4x2, and then she's like, okay, well, I'm taking off. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's just a weird. I love track meets. Not typically billed as like spectator events, but when you start going to them a little bit, you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Hi,
all right, we have guests are joining us here. This is great.
What are you doing?
Oh, I just thought I'd pop up and say hi. I was trying to see what was going on. Just got home.
Yeah. So, Bryan, do you want to introduce our guests?
This is my wife, Jill. For what? How many years? Too long?
Too long.
Yeah.
98?
Yeah, since 98.
Wow. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And who? One of the people who usually tunes in always wants to know about pets. So who's your dog there?
So we got Benny and Bear. This is Benny.
Okay.
So this is my brother spent about 3 years in Afghanistan at Kabul.
Oh. Yeah.
At the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, and they retired his dog, and he gave his dog to me. So I've got his bomb-sniffing dog from Kabul, and then we've got a boxer mix here.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that story. That's awesome.
Yeah. So he's a fun dog. He's a fun dog.
That is pretty. So do you have some fun with that in the neighborhood? Like if he gets a little sniffy with somebody in the neighborhood, you're like, hey.
Oh, hey, what do you got in your car?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the first 2 weeks we had him every morning, on a walk, he'd just have to stop and check every car out.
That's great.
Then it kind of gradually went away.
Force a habit. I love that. So the other thing that we've asked a lot of people who played
I
sports.
will depart now.
Okay.
Yeah, nice
Joe.
meeting you.
Yeah,
Nice
thanks.
to meet you.
Another thing we ask is whether you guys are still participating, whether you're still competing in any way, and this could include beer league softball or volleyball or anything.
Well, Brian, I know you run every day. I guess you compete against yourself.
Yeah. I've got quite a kind of a streak going. So when we got our dog Bear, our boxer mix, he was kind of wild. So we started taking him every day. He and I would go every day. So
Oh, wow.
we've pretty much gone just about every day here.
When's the last time you missed, Brian?
When's the last time I missed? Oh, the last time I missed a run was the day my mom died, which was January 25th, 2015. That's the last day I missed a run.
Oh, wow.
So,
I mean,
James, I'll tell you a funny
That's a
story.
lot
So
of negative 30s in there.
Yeah, that was. So when when Jim says he's soft, every once in a while I'll send him a quick selfie and go, "Here you go. Come on, let's go."
He sent me a picture this winter, and I'm not kidding you. You had like stuff off your eyelashes, frozen stuff coming out of your nose, and I looked at the weather, and it was like -20. I'm like, "What are you doing? Like that's not even human." He's like, "Oh, I had to get out."
Yeah.
God bless
Dogs
you.
want to go. The dogs want to go. They every day they're kind of like, "Hey, it's time to go, guys. Let's go."
I guess.
Wow.
Better man than me.
Same. Yeah, that's the same. The same is true for me. This was a fairly mild winter. Last winter, not so mild. And
Right.
Yeah. Some of those days, I see our house backs up to a bike path, and that bike path is never empty. 365 days. There's always something going on out there. And yeah,
that's crazy.
Those days when it's 20 below, I'm like, God bless you guys. So that's you, Brian. It's
addictive. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things. It's just kind of addictive too. So,
yeah.
But I had a friend tell me, she's like, well, "Why do you do that?" And then I said, "Well, I don't know. I just do it." And she said, "Well, you know what you get to do though? Every day you get to spend a little bit of time with your mom." So,
that's
cool.
So that was kind of, now after it's like, yeah, that is kind of the thing. That is kind of the thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nice. All right, Jim. You playing any softball? You playing any flag football?
I play old man baseball.
Do you really?
Yeah, and I'm not playing. I'm not playing this year because we're getting ready to move. But I played the last probably 4 years or so, and it's crazy and it's fun. But you wake up the next day and you're like, I didn't know that I had that muscle any longer, and that hurts. And so it's fun. It's an over 50 league, and we hang out. It's a chance to grab some beers afterwards and play on a Sunday morning or whatever, Sunday afternoon or whatever it is. And so
that's fantastic.
I do that, and I do I jump on that crazy. I do the indoor bike ride, the crazy Peloton, and I like to get out. I like to get out in the spring and the summer on a mountain bike and go find some trails and go screw around a little bit. So
yeah, that's great.
That's it. I can't. The knees don't allow me to run too much anymore. So I can go 90 feet from base to base, and that's about it.
I do recall your bionic leg when you brought up the fact that you were injured in high school. It seems to me that you were one of those guys who was carrying around a huge sleeve or something, right? Didn't you?
And I had this, they had the, back in the day, right? These goofy braces and stuff, and now they're so much better.
Yeah.
But I had that goofy brace on because I didn't, like when I tore my ACL my junior year right after football, it was the second to last game, Brian, I think if I'm not mistaken. I know it was against I think it was the second to last game. I didn't have surgery right away, and I ended up playing in the spring season in baseball without an ACL. I don't know how you say that, but anyway, I had to wear a brace. And so if I didn't do that, I think the knee would kind of pop out. Not kind of, it would. And and so I did that, and then I ended up having it fixed after the baseball season my junior year. But and then unfortunately our daughter had her ACL. She tore her ACL, right going into her senior year, which is too bad. She was a great little softball player too. I think it's become more and more common. I really do, because I think athletes are better. I think they train harder. Sports are a lot more physical, and so it's just crazy, right? So that being said, I think the medicine's better. She was healed up super quick. But back in the day, I think I remember I had that surgery, and they had me in this straight leg brace. Bryan, you might remember this. They had me in this straight leg brace, and they didn't move it for, gosh, like 3 months. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way to do things, because when I got done,
No.
when I got done, my leg couldn't go anywhere, and they actually had to put me under just to break the scar tissue in my knee. I'm like,
Oh.
Honestly, I can remember probably on 2 hands the times I've cried in my life, and that was like probably third most painful in my whole life. Just going on the rehab table and them trying to wrench my knee was terrible. So anyway, medicine has come a long way, thank goodness. That's for sure.
I do remember there was a kid who was a year older than us named Chris Cernacrack, who was a very good athlete too, a kid I grew up with. And he had some sort of knee surgery when we were in high school. And it was like the first time it had ever been performed. And I think it was like, even to scope a knee back then was, a multi-day situation. And now it's like outpatient afternoon surgery.
It's so incredible. And take that. I was talking to someone the other day who had like a hip replacement. I had a buddy that I played with in college had a hip replacement, and this lady I was talking to, my buddy, they were up and out. They get you out of the hospital like in a day, like hit the bricks. We don't have, go do your rehab. I'm like, wow, that's such a change.
How long were you there? Because I remember having to come visit you too. How long were you in the hospital for?
I think I was in the hospital for like 4 or 5 days.
Oh,
I think,
and then so it was crazy. It was kind of a goofy summer after my junior year. But,
but that brace was a great piece of comedy though, a couple of times. Because can I tell that story about going to Cooper?
Yes, please. That's the whole point of this.
So John Doherty, Jim, and I go to the Hopkins basketball game. I think they're playing at Cooper, right? Was it Cooper?
Yeah.
So Jim says he's going to drive, which we didn't object. So he drives, and it was, I don't know, it's January, January, February. It's cold, it's icy. We get to Cooper. I get out. Sean gets out. And we're looking around like, hey, where'd Jim go? And Jim had like stepped out of the car and then slipped and fell. And then I don't know how you did it, but he ended up like under the car almost. And we were just like laying there going,
Oh. And there wasn't much help. I think you guys are just laughing at me.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was one of those.
Great friends.
Yeah,
The running joke was watching the guy from California learn how to drive in the snow and ice in Minnesota. I think it was the most fun you've ever had.
I'm surprised to hear you say that you don't know how he ended up under the car, because that's what happens when you fall down when you get out of the car. In the winter, you go under the car.
But Jace, he knew where I was too. He's waiting. That's all.
But we just slid him right into, that was the nice part. We just slid him right into Cooper. And
easy.
That's fantastic. Got him a wheelchair for front row seats. Fantastic.
Yeah, he may have swore a little bit too at us and about us the rest of the night.
Never.
All right. So the question we ask everybody on the show is, do you remember a teacher from, and it could be from Hopkins, it could be from junior high or whatever, but a teacher that still comes up in your mind that had a long-term impact on your life that you still sort of draw on. Jim, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think there's probably, I'd say there's probably two. One was a teacher. Well, one was Ramon. He was probably one of the first folks I met when I moved there, and it was, super awkward. I didn't know anyone. I was the kid sitting in the corner for a week or so trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. And Ramon, I think, came up to me and introduced himself and was super kind and just generous, and that made a difference to me. And then I could see as time went on just how people gravitated towards him. What a super nice gentleman and super kind, and you could see his relationship with the kids, which was just great. And then I think the other one for me was Coach McDonald on the football team, and we came in and we were new together, and while I didn't have him in class, I think he was a history teacher if I'm not mistaken. But that first year was tough, and he was great. He was one of those guys that, much like Coach Welch, would put his arm around you and say, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, it's all new and you'll figure it out. But he was special to this day, and he was, you talk about things that are indelible. Just his words of encouragement, and how he approached things was great. And so those are two that probably jump out. And I really like Miss Meyer too in Spanish. I love Spanish. I thought she was great. So she was one of my favorite teachers that I actually had, day over day.
We've had people on the show who moved at various times, and the myth or the sort of standard wisdom on this is the older you are, the harder it is when you move, when you change schools. You changed time zones, states, climates, and schools, obviously. And you just said that was tough. What about that situation? What about that circumstance of showing up to Hopkins on the first day of school your junior year? Do you remember what stuck with you and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so the school I went to in Southern California is Orange County, was this big Catholic high school. So it was like, you had to wear slacks and penny loafers or dress shoes and like collared shirts. And I remember going to Hopkins day one, and there's people with beards and, flannels and shirts untucked. I'm like, whoa, this is like a whole thing. And so for me, that was the whole, that in and of itself, when you walk through the front doors, that was different. Campuses in Southern California are all open. So you don't, you don't have quads like we had and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, this is the God's honest truth. Like the people I met, people that are perhaps watching and maybe some that aren't, were some of the nicest people I've ever met. And there's a thing called Minnesota Nice that you guys all probably joke about and stuff like that. But having gone there, I'm so much better because of it, because there's such a genuineness, easy for me to say, of people there. And you truly meet folks who you're like, that's just good people. And I think that really stuck with me. So that was hard to make that transition, but to meet people that, like I met Bryan and others who were so welcoming, it made the transition that much easier. It's tough. I would say it was easier, a little bit easier for me perhaps, because I got to meet a bunch of great people through sports. But I think it's tough on anyone. Anytime I see someone coming in new, I always feel for those folks who I've been on that side of the lunch table by yourself, just kind of doing your thing. So,
yeah.
But it's good. It makes you a little bit tougher. It forces you to, anyways. Otherwise, you eat by yourself forever. And I don't want to do that. So it's all good.
Well, that was kind of the thing. We just kind of felt sorry for you. That was the big thing.
I know. I mean, as you should have.
At the time, yeah.
Bryan, do you have a teacher that you still think about?
You know what? Surprisingly, it's the same too. I mean, Jim said a lot. Jim and I had a pretty good relationship with Ramon, and I probably got to know Ramon through Jim because Jim had a pretty good relationship with him too. And he was just kind of one of those guys that, it was okay to be kind of fun and goofy as an adult. And, he and I could do some things. And I mean, some of the stuff that Jim and I were able to do with Ramon is actually pretty funny. And, he's just kind of one of those guys. It was just like, wow, yeah, it's okay to, have a little bit of fun, which was really not my background at all. So, but it's okay to have a little bit of fun and do some fun things in school, and school doesn't necessarily have to be as serious as it is. So, and then, the same thing with Coach McDonald too. And not only was he a great coach, but he was a great teacher. Just having him for psych class was awesome. I mean, he was just a great teacher and welcoming, and he did so much just for me and my own confidence. It's just remarkable. So
was he psych? Was he psych? I don't know what he was. I don't remember.
Social studies.
Social studies. Yeah. I think I had him for psych. I think it was.
Okay. Jace, I'll tell you a funny, not a funny story, but I'll tell you a teacher story. So I went away to college, and after I came back my freshman year, and that summer, Mr. Bouchard, you guys remember Mr. Bouchard? So he calls me into his, he called me up and said, hey, my son's thinking about going to the University of San Diego, which is where I had gone. And he said, would you be okay talking to him? And so I did. I ended up going to talk with Mark Bouchard, who was a year behind us at Minnetonka High School. Some of you might remember he played goalie for that group, I think. And anyway, long story short, Mark and I talked, and he ended up coming out to USD, and we became teammates. And so Mark and I were teammates. So Mr. Bouchard's son was my teammate, and then ultimately my roommate, and now currently my brother-in-law. So he married my sister. So Mr. Bouchard, so Adrian, we catch up with him every now and again. He's down in Florida, and Mark is my brother-in-law. We get a chance to catch up. He and my sister live in Eden Prairie. My other sister lives up in Chisago. My Allison, who graduated in 90, I think it's 90, right? She's up in Chisago. Jen graduated in 92, and she's out in Eden Prairie. So that's kind of a little tie-in to a teacher story.
All right, you're going to have to put us in touch with Monsieur Bouchard, because he has come up many, like in this part of the show, many people talk about him.
Okay.
Because he led the infamous annual French trip, which
that's right.
Was like the days of wine and roses is sort of how I think of it. All these kids who went on the French trip went over there and got rip-roaring drunk, hung out with sailors like it was crazy town. And never would happen today.
Meanwhile, Mr. Bouchard's in the other bar next door.
Right, yeah.
Nothing to see over here. Just go over there.
Living his best life, going, I can't believe they pay me to come to Paris.
Go to Paris, drink wine all week.
So I know he's down in Florida half the year. I think he winters down there, and I think he comes back up to Minnesota in the summer. So Jace, I will make a point to connect you all with him, and that'd be fun, because I know I wasn't French, I was Spanish, but I know a lot of people. He was endearing to a lot of people for sure. Yeah,
that sounds great. So before we wrap it up here, so Eric Haugen provided me with a good question, and it's about you brought up your college days. You both went to USD. Different USDs.
I went Bryan, to the Harbor of the Midwest. I don't know about what the other one is, but
exactly. Okay, so Bryan, you went to University of South Dakota.
Yeah.
Where is the University of South Dakota, and what led you there, and how was your experience at USD?
You're recording this, right? So now I have to keep the story clean. Okay. University of South Dakota, how did I get there? Well, first of all, it's in Vermillion, South Dakota, the greater Vermillion Metroplex, which is about halfway between, it's a little more than halfway between Sioux Falls and Sioux City, Iowa. So it's right along the border. So it's nice. But it's nice. No, it was great. I had a great time there. Both of my parents were from South Dakota. So my dad kind of gave me the option of going to South Dakota. And he said, well, that sounds like a really great place to go to school, don't you think? I guess. I had a couple other places in mind, and he said, okay, here's the deal. I'll pay for there. You get to pay for anywhere else. So,
check.
Okay, done and done.
And Bryan, you remember that time I came and I think we had quarter beers remember that? We were sitting in some bar. I don't know what the heck it was.
Oh yeah, I took these two clowns down there too, and I think they didn't quite understand how cheap beer is, because it's about the same as water in South Dakota.
So.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that whole thing a quarter? We should have more. We should keep doing that. Should just keep doing it.
It was a long night. It was a long night.
Now, this was probably a crime in South Dakota, but USD, as opposed to South Dakota State, the Coyotes or the Jackrabbits, I forget which is which.
We were the USD Coyotes. So the South Dakota State, that's a bad word.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so the one redeeming quality of University of South Dakota, it was the first Division II college with its own dome. So, that was kind of attractive. Like, oh, they have a dome. So that was nice.
You don't have to practice outside. Is that what that meant?
Well, yeah, no, because during August you practiced outside in the morning when it was 95, and then you practiced inside in the morning when it was 95 inside the dome, because they didn't have air conditioning. There's the caveat. It didn't have air conditioning. And then in the afternoon, when it got to be about 95, 96 outside, then you got to go out there too.
So you played football at USD.
Yeah.
And what position? How did that all go? Are you a USD letterman? Do you have a USD letter jacket?
I do not have a jacket. They didn't. But I do have a letter. So I lettered 3 years.
Okay.
So I played 5 seasons as redshirt my freshman year, and then lettered sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Fantastic.
And I played corner and strong safety.
is UND the big rival of USD?
Oh yeah.
Or
So
is SDSU?
it was South Dakota State and USD were the two big rivals. Yeah, obviously.
Okay.
But yeah, we played North Dakota State, St. Cloud, Mankato. And at the time, Nebraska Omaha had a team, and then Morningside, and then Northern Colorado and Greeley. So that was
Oh,
the
wow.
cup. Yeah.
Do you
Okay.
get back there ever?
I haven't. I haven't for a long time. I was out there probably, my kids were little, probably 15 years ago, maybe was about the last time I was out there.
Sure.
Yeah, I just have really no need or interest. So
Nice. Now, that's a good segue because Jim went to the other USD, which is a little more attractive for a visit. And the thing we talked about before we went on was I mean, I'd have to really think about it, but you're one of the few people I know who went to college in a warm, like a legit warm weather place. And that sounds fantastic to me. It also, you know, there are a lot of stories that I have from going to college at University of Wisconsin. Bryan, I'm sure you have some of the same that go right along with it being 20 below zero. And, you know, certain things wouldn't happen that way if it wasn't that cold. But so tell me about your USD experience there. I know you played baseball. Is that the reason that you went primarily?
Well, I guess sort of. When we moved from California to Minnesota, I'll never forget my dad coming in and say, "Hey, you know, I got transferred to Minnesota. Like, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Are you asking me? Or are you telling me?" And he's like, "We're going." I'm like, "All right." I said, "Would you mind if it worked out where I could go back to college in California?" He's like, "No, that's, you know, we can look at that when the time comes." And so, you know, like I said earlier, I really enjoyed football, and I love playing football. And you know, I thought of going to like a smaller school to go play football or something like that, but it didn't work out. I think with the knee and all that stuff. And so, anyway, long story short, it was time for me to sort of go back, you know, choose colleges. And so I applied to a couple. Pepperdine and USD out in California, and I chose USD because it gave me the best chance to go walk on, and so I walked on and played 4 years for the University of San Diego, and it was great. Like you know, had a chance to meet good buddies to this day, as I mentioned, Mark, who's now my brother-in-law. So, you know, you talk about things happening for a reason. I met my wife, who was actually the trainer for our baseball team, you know, and our son graduated from there just a couple years ago. So it was nice to go to a warm weather place. It was not the worst thing in the world to go, you know, leave Christmas in Minnesota and jump to a flight in San Diego. So it was fun. It was it was definitely a fun college experience. A lot of our stories happened 10 miles south, which is on the other side of the border in Tijuana, which I'll leave those there. But we had some fun. We had some fun on the other side too, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, like, boy, you mean to tell me that before a basketball game, like when you're waiting outside for them to open the doors, like you're not fomenting revolution among your fellow students to say, you know, we have every right to be in that building right now.
That's right.
Yeah, keeping us out.
I will say, you know, the one downside, our school was small. It's, you know, it's a small, you know, smaller school, maybe 5,000. I think at the time maybe it was 4,000 students or something like that.
Oh, really?
Now, yeah, maybe it's now 5,000 or 6,000. I don't even know. So, so we had, you know, it was Division I sports. They played in the same conference as Gonzaga, you know, basketball and baseball, BYU, and all that stuff. But, you know, we didn't have the big time football. We didn't have the big time basketball. There was, you know, basketball's Division I. We got our clocks handed to us every time. But, you know, I think I sort of missed that Madison, you know, fourth quarter. What do you guys jump up? You know, whatever you call that.
Jump around,
yeah, jump around. Or like, I didn't have that experience. So we'd go up to SC and watch some games, or out to A State or something like that in Phoenix, and do some of that stuff. But nothing on campus, which I sort of missed a little bit, you know.
I just, you know, several years ago, I went to San Francisco for work and caught a University of San Francisco basketball game, and they play in that conference as well. The Catholic school, the WCC, right?
That's right.
And I thought, boy, I would love, when I retire, I hope to live in a WCC city and just have season basketball tickets. 2,000 seat arena,
Mhm.
just roll in, watch Division I basketball.
It's great. I'll tell you, if you're a hoops fan, I'll tell you. So I think it was my junior year in college. In our conference was Steve Nash at Santa Clara. It was Bo Kimball and Hank Gathers at Loyola Marymount.
Oh,
Of course,
wow,
they had
yeah.
a great run. And now, of course, you see the Gonzagas of the world and stuff. So it
Yeah.
really is good basketball for sure. It's a good little conference. It's not great, but it's a good. There's some good players that run through there.
Yeah. Well, you guys, so we've reached the point in the show where we need to touch base whether you guys have anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to yet. If you have any questions for each other, now would be a good time to put each other on the spot if you wanted to.
Oh,
So many opportunities.
oh, jeez.
Yeah. I don't know. I asked Bryan earlier if I could borrow some of the flow that he has, some of that lettuce he has going on over there. I don't think when's the last time you got your haircut, pal? It's been a minute.
I actually got a cut about 6 weeks ago, but that'd been the first time for a year.
Now, Bryan, you, I believe, did you sport the flat top the entire high school?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really. Yeah, it was kind of a modified. So I don't know. My mom always liked to do a little bit. My mom was kind of a beautician, so she liked to do a little experiment on some stuff and try different things. So yeah, I think when Brian Bosworth got the stripes in his head, she decided that'd look cool. Let's try that. So yeah, that was probably some of the high school career.
Yeah.
But I've had short hair pretty much all my life, and then I couldn't get a haircut for a while, and I said, "What the hell? Might as well try it."
Right.
So.
You had a little Bart Simpson going too, didn't you? Like wasn't that the time?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Yeah, a little sticky up there. Yeah.
What's the verdict around your house for the longer locks?
My daughter's a big fan, so that's kind of why I've kept it. She's like, no, that looks. I mean, I figured, hey, if we're talking about '80s stuff, I'm just going to rock the '80s hair then.
That's good. Yeah, there are some guys that we've run past who regrettably had some really crazy mullets in high school, and I don't think that doesn't apply to any of us. So we've got at least that. We can show our high school yearbook photos and not be that regretful of it.
Right. Yeah.
I had some Elton John sized glasses. But other than that,
Jason, I remember those glasses.
I do. Yeah.
they were memorable. I'll tell you the funny story about those senior photos is those of us who wore glasses, they said, go to your optometrist and get the lenses popped out and then come in without the lenses so you don't get the glare. What a scam, That's what I did because I had to have those glasses on in my photo, right? No one would recognize me without them.
My wife and I were sharing yearbook pictures with our kids, I don't know, over Christmas or something. And the comments were like, oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm like, trust me, you too will have moments like that. Just wait for it.
Oh yeah, my somewhere around here, my first driver's license is floating around in my house, and my wife loves to take that out and show it to people after a few drinks at a dinner party. Like,
that's right. That's
look
right.
at this.
My kids have found the yearbooks and they noticed some of the comments in there. So, Mr. Keene, some of your stuff has actually been read by my kids.
Oh,
that was
that not
terrific.
good?
Like, hey, no, you don't get to read that. That's not a thing.
No.
Was it bad? Was it really bad?
No, there was some stuff in there that was not so great that I was like, ooh, I can't believe she said that.
Some of our classmates were not. Yeah. That's where the yearbook sometimes needs to stay in the box.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right.
Well, you guys, this has been, my God, an hour later, we're done here. Thank you both so much. It was great catching up with both.
Thank you.
Great stories. Unfortunately, we couldn't go live tonight, so we didn't get the play-by-play from our peanut gallery, but we'll post this right away so people can comment on the Facebook page. But
thank you. Thanks for all you do in hosting this and pulling people together and keeping the spirit alive. That's kind of a cool thing. It's I was telling my wife about it. She went to school in California. She's like, we don't have anything like that. So thank you. Well, you probably don't you probably don't realize the impact it has, but this is super cool.
It's
Yeah,
been
this is
really
way cool.
fun. Thank you both. Yeah, it's been really fun. And Marnie hopefully will be back next week. And this is a harebrained scheme that we both cooked up, and it's turned out to be pretty fun. So yeah, appreciate you both joining us in the fun. And I think that's about it. We'll see somebody back. So hopefully both of you guys back to talk football next week. And
Absolutely.
Happy
everybody
to.
else, take
Thanks all.
care.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you.
Thanks all.